Now, detonate the reality bomb!
I will build a great, great wall.
Some alien race to come down and threaten us.
Is the singularity near?
The truth is out there.
The military-industrial complex.
The 7 mountains of the influencers of culture.
To be as gods, you know.
Change has come to America.
Catapult of propaganda.
From a secure location on top of the ridge in the heart of the beautiful Missouri Ozarks, this is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
It's a chilly night on the ridge, but the coyotes are still howling. The dachshund snugged tightly in bed. And that means it's time once again for A View from the Bunker Live for February 17th, 2019. Coming up tonight, a state of emergency. Well, what's one more? Democrats realize their gift to the Republicans. A fake hate crime in Chicago. And parents, a dangerous new online challenge to talk about tonight. Our guests tonight, it's 2 for the price of 1. We talk about a new film that takes you from Qumran to Petra with archaeologist Dr. Judkins and filmmaker Ty Towriss. Oh, settle in. Bundle up. It's VFTB Live. I'm Derek Gilbert. And welcome wherever you're listening tonight, whether it's Spreaker.com, iHeartRadio, Stitcher.com, Spotify.com, or if you're just listening at the website VFTB.net. Thank you for inviting us in this chilly evening. If you're listening in the archives, well, that's fine too. We appreciate you subscribing. That's the easiest way to keep up with the archives of this particular program. You can subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and of course, we've got links to do all of those things at the website, which is VFTB.net. That's what you call your basic acronym, View from the Bunker. Of course, we've got a mobile app. That's probably even easier because the mobile app automatically gets you access to the archives going all the way back to 2009 when we started doing this thing. And you'll find links to the Google Play Store and the iTunes App Store at, guess where? VFTB.net, yes. We also post the audio to our YouTube channel. That is youtube.com/Derek Gilbert, and you'll find us on social media as well. You can subscribe, give us a like at facebook.com, View from the Bunker. On Twitter at View from Bunker or at Derek Gilbert. Either one, I answer to both. And the new and newly improved, I noticed, as of today, February 17th, oneway.com. Oneway.com, the handle there is at Derek P. Gilbert. So, now that we've got all the boilerplate stuff out of the way, looking forward to an interesting discussion tonight of archaeology, because archaeology is cool, and especially when, as it often does, it helps corroborate the biblical narrative. So we'll look forward to that. Our guests coming up at the bottom of the hour, Dr. Judkins and filmmaker Ty Towriss, about their new film, Qumran to Petra, part of a new series that we'll talk to them about called Footsteps of Lost Truth. By the way, if you're listening at Spreaker.com, you can log in and weigh in at the chat room, which is now open for business. What is going on this week? Well, it's been an interesting week politically, as they have been quite often of late. President Trump has declared a state of emergency Friday morning at just past 9 o'clock Central Time, declared a state of emergency concerning the southern border, which will, he hopes, allow him to allocate about $8 billion altogether for funding a border barrier. Now, last week we had been talking about the bill that was being negotiated in Congress back and forth. Republicans and Democrats came together on a funding bill because the Congress had basically just been kicking the can down the road. The government was operating without a budget, technically. They had passed a 2-week extension that allowed the government to stay open to continue negotiating the border. Democrats betting that they can turn this into something that hurts the president more than the president not building the wall. I mean, President Trump basically made this a cornerstone of his presidency when he wasn't running as, in the Republican primaries. And I think the president's base really wants to see that wall built, or at least a good start on it, before the election comes up in 2020, or President Trump will not be reelected. I think it's that simple. Unfortunately, he's facing opposition from both parties. There is opposition from within his party, And I think it's pretty clear because the budget bill that they presented to him that was passed by the House and the Senate only gave him a quarter of what he had asked for. He'd been asking for $5.7 billion. It contained $1.375. And what $1.375? How'd they negotiate? Oh, okay, it's 25% of what he'd asked for. So he indicated he would sign the bill. He apparently has, and then he declared a state of emergency, which then he said would allow him to reallocate about $3.5 billion from the Defense Department's military construction budget, redirect $2.5 billion from the Defense Department's drug interdiction efforts. And isn't it curious? The Defense Department is actually involved in the war on drugs. So he's also going to take about $600 million from the Treasury Department's drug forfeiture program. But of course, this all assumes he's going to get this done because there will be legal challenges filed as soon as the courts open tomorrow morning. In fact, there may already have been challenges filed Friday afternoon because, the attorneys were working on it all through the week. This was not exactly a surprise, this declaration of emergency. Now, the president knows it's going to be challenged in court. In fact, he said so during his speech from the Rose Garden, which, by the way, he's speaking off the cuff. He's getting more comfortable at doing it, and I think he did the best that he could with the topic that he had at his disposal. I'm not crazy about the idea of the president having to go to an emergency declaration because it does set up some bad precedent. A future Democrat president, for example, say President Kamala Harris, deciding that climate change is a national emergency and then single-handedly rerouting money inside the federal budget to fight climate change. Could happen, I suppose. Now, attorney Alan Dershowitz, who's a liberal, but he's an honest liberal, he does believe in the rule of law and adhering to the powers allocated to the branches of government in the Constitution, said that he thinks this is a mistake. And for the most part, he's been a supporter of President Trump, doesn't agree with all of his policies, but he's been more critical of Democrats that have been ranting about impeaching the president. For what? Well, because they don't like him, mainly. But Dershowitz says he thinks that emergency declaration is a mistake, because in his view, emergencies are things that happen suddenly, like an earthquake or a hurricane, tornado. And the problems with immigration are long-term. So what President Trump has done, essentially, is declare an emergency because Congress would not allocate the money that he deems necessary to build a border on the to build a barrier on the southern border. Dershowitz went on to say the Constitution requires that all spending bills originate in the House of Representatives. This is a way of circumventing that provision of the Constitution. Well, Dershowitz is right about that. And I think it's worth asking the question, why didn't President Trump push this when he had a Republican majority in the House of Representatives before the election in 2018? It may be that President Trump was counting on this being a winning political issue. In other words, if the border wall doesn't get built and more drugs cross the border, more angel families are created by people who shouldn't be in this country, who are here illegally, then the Democrats are going to have a real hard time defending their opposition to this wall, which, as the president pointed out during his State of the Union address a couple of weeks ago, most of the representatives who were in Congress back in 2006, when they voted to build a border fence, voted in favor of. I mean, it was bipartisan support back in 2006 when George W. Bush was president. The problem is they voted to build a dual fence with like an asphalt strip in between them. Something that would have been really difficult for somebody to get across quickly. But then they amended the bill in 2007 to give the Department of Homeland Security Secretary the authority to decide where the fence should be built. And then when you got right down to it, not much of it got built at all. But like I said, the majority of the people in the House and in the Senate vote was something like 82 to 18 or something. And you never get 80% of the senators voting one way or the other anymore. So again, you've got bipartisan opposition to Donald Trump, and that's the main reason the House and the Senate are not voting to give him the money he thinks is necessary to build that border wall. The spending bill that he did get on Friday, and I think this is something he should have pointed out in order to justify his emergency declaration, is that the spending bill that was passed by the House and Senate had a provision in it that allows counties connected to Mexican cartels to block construction of a barrier. Specific Texas border counties can block the effort to build barriers, fencing, or walls simply by saying, no, we don't want one. Now, this is crazy. It would be one thing if the federal government was, coming into Missouri and saying, we're going to build a border wall between your county and Berry County or Lawrence County or Christian County. That would be stupid. But when you're talking about the national border, the federal government should have the authority to say, look, we're going to put a wall here, whether you've got a butterfly refuge or not. We don't care. This is our national border. It's a matter of national security. And you, local county official, do not have the power to stop this. But that's what's in this bill. And the problem is that there are several counties specifically named in this bill, Starr, Hidalgo, and Cameron counties in Texas, which over the last 20 years have seen 5 sheriffs and numerous top law enforcement officials go to prison because they were taking bribes from the Gulf Cartel. They've got a vested personal interest, some of these guys, in keeping the borders open. You think they're going to say to the government, oh, yes, go ahead and build that fence, build that wall? No. So not only did the president get 1/4 of the money he requested from Congress, they put these poison pills in there that would practically make it impossible for the barriers to go up where they're most needed. That's why he declared the emergency. Well, it's why Ann Coulter is calling the president an idiot this weekend. She believes that he shouldn't have signed the bill at all. And she may be right. Time will tell. Anyway, we will see what happens, because there could be something happens that changes this whole thing on a dime. Somebody shouldn't be in the country, takes someone's life in a robbery or as a drunk driver or something, and suddenly the optics can change in a real hurry. So we'll see. We got a long way to go before this gets built, because, again, this is going to get challenged in the court, probably go all the way to the Supreme Court, and we'll see how the Supremes decide to vote on something like this. Democrats beginning to see that, and by the way, the feds just made their largest fentanyl bust ever just last week, which is, again, why this border barrier is really necessary. The largest fentanyl bust in American history just last week. This is a drug that has led to about 70,000 deaths per year. Democrats beginning to realize that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, representative from Queens, is becoming a real liability. Democrat Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney represents Long Island City. This is where Amazon was going to build a new headquarters building in New York. Amazon last week announced, forget it, we're not putting up with all this garbage, and we're just not going to build the headquarters here. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez immediately went to social media to take credit for stopping Amazon's plans to build this new building. The thing is, this new headquarters would have brought about 25,000 jobs to New York, with average salary of about $150,000 apiece. Now, I know that doesn't go as far in New York City as it does here in the Ozarks, but still, those are good jobs, $150,000 apiece. And Ocasio-Cortez is celebrating. Well, the congresswoman who actually represents the district in which this new business would have gone, Carolyn Maloney, Democrat, was, so what's a good word here, aghast? She said in an interview, now we're protesting jobs? Well, not exactly. I mean, they're protesting corporate power and abuse of corporate power, but yeah, apparently Representative Ocasio-Cortez and her progressive allies are willing to sacrifice jobs in order to make a point. It's called cutting off your nose to spite your face. Apparently, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez and her followers really think tax abatement is just a big pile of money that the government there in New York was ready to just hand to Amazon. No, a tax break, a break on the taxes Amazon would have paid. But by not giving them the tax break, New York is not getting the tax revenue that would have come from having the business there, plus having 25,000 people earning about $150,000 apiece. So, Democrats, again, beginning to realize that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is giving Republicans some really great talking points for the 2020 election. In Israel, because there are things happening in other parts of the world, the Israel Defense Force, underwent a massive simulation last week to train troops for combat missions for a future war with Hezbollah. We pray this doesn't come about, but, they got to train for it because you never know. The IDF announced this on Friday. This was conducted by the Armored Corps, the 401st Brigade of the Armored Corps, the largest exercise in recent years. Troops trained alongside the Israeli Air Force, in addition to the Intelligence and Engineering Corps. You know that last month, of course, they destroyed a number of tunnels crossing underneath the border between Lebanon and Israel into northern Israel. So Israel's concerned that as the situation in Syria stabilizes, and they're down to just a couple of pockets of rebels in Syria now, troops from Hezbollah that have been fighting for Bashar al-Assad will be returning to Lebanon, and things with Hezbollah may heat up again. So the Israeli Defense Forces getting ready for that. In Chicago, I haven't talked a lot about this because plenty of people have been weighing in on it, but it's my hometown, and frankly, this is just such an egregious example of how slanted things are in our media these days. That it deserves at least a mention. I've never watched this show, Empire, on Fox. Of course, we don't watch many network television programs. Most of what Sharon and I watch on TV comes off of Netflix or Amazon Prime, and it's usually produced in Britain somewhere. British crime shows like Endeavour, Inspector Lewis, stuff like that. Anyway, an actor on the Fox series Empire named Jussie Smollett. He's 35, plays a gay singer on the program. He identifies as homosexual, and on January 29th, I believe was the date, he claimed to police that he was attacked at 2 a.m. in downtown Chicago by a couple of men who carried out what he described as a hate crime, that they had shouted at him a racial slur, a homophobic slur, and then shouted something like, "This is MAGA country," MAGA, Make America Great Again, while wearing red MAGA caps. Now, bear in mind, this took place at 2 a.m. in downtown Chicago, and on a night when the wind chill factor was about -10 Fahrenheit. So there were a few yellow flags that kind of went up there for me. First of all, it's not likely that redneck racists would even know who he is. I had never heard of him before, and I try to keep up with the media, but I'm 57. I don't. The kids these days and what they watch. I'm not up to speed in all of that. Had never heard of him before. It's not likely this Empire is a show that many racists are going to watch. They would even know who this guy was, much less hang around at 2 o'clock in the morning with a wind chill of 10 below. Just so they could beat this guy up. And who would yell, "This is MAGA country"? I mean, even people I know who have Make America Great Again caps don't say MAGA country. So it just didn't ring true, okay? And then as details came out over the last couple of weeks, things began to smell even more, shall we say, off. Like CCTV camera, security camera, showed that he went into this alley where the attack supposedly took place, came out with a rope around his neck, okay, symbol of lynching, I guess. He claimed he'd been doused with some sort of chemical like bleach, had been beat up. He did go see a doctor, but he had just come out of a Subway sandwich shop, and he came out of this after getting beat up, doused with a chemical, and with a rope, put around his neck, and he was still holding a sandwich. Again, not really ringing true. He supposedly called his manager during the attack, which makes you wonder, when you're getting beat up, how do you have time to make a phone call? And then he wouldn't turn the phone over to police when they requested it to double-check his story. So a lot of this didn't ring true. And then yesterday came word that police had finally arrested 2 persons of interest in this case, and it turned out the 2 men are Nigerian. Just let that sink in. Not likely the perpetrators of a racist attack. So anyway, Jussie Smollett is now, and the sad thing about this is that the media immediately jumped onto this story and, decrying the evil Trump supporters who are racist and who beat this guy up, and this is a hate crime that should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Well, hate crimes are not acceptable. Okay, we judge one another on the basis of who we are, not the color of our skin, or even so. But we're living in a society, frankly, that rewards victimization, victimhood. And we're seeing a pattern develop that is disturbing, because we're seeing more and more people who are claiming to be victims because we reward certain categories of victimhood in our country. And not only did the media jump out on this, but a number of presidential candidates who rushed to the media to declare their support. Senator Booker, Senator Harris, Senator Gillibrand, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and many in the media. They're much quieter today after it's come out that the 2 gentlemen involved in this attack not only weren't white, but they may in fact have helped stage this attack for Mr. Smollett. But again, this is what happens when we encourage victimhood. And we're going to see more of this, I think, until the media starts taking a little more of a critical eye when claims like this come out. Anyway, there was a rumor that the reason Jussie Smollett may have staged this attack, and that appears to be what Chicago police believe now, by the way, was that he was being written out of the program, written out of Empire. Now, the producers of Empire deny that, but now that it's becoming more clear that his story just doesn't hold water, are they going to keep him on the show now? Anyway, we got to talk about this because this is disturbing. Kids don't have enough of a frame of reference to make good decisions sometimes. But if you're listening to this program, you're listening to this in the archives, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, 40 years ago, when I was 17, I thought my parents were pretty stupid. And as I got a little older, got past the age of 25, I realized, well, Mom and Dad are smarter than I thought, and they kept getting smarter. In fact, my dad passed in 2005, and he keeps getting smarter for some reason. I don't know how he manages that, but as I get older, they get smarter. Kids may be really intelligent. I mean, I was an intelligent kid. Our daughter was an intelligent kid. But there are certain things you just don't understand until you have enough life experience to realize how stupid or dangerous something is, until your frontal lobes are fully developed, that kind of thing. A new social media trend is going around right now, and this is even being reported here in the Ozarks. So don't think if you're living in small-town America or rural America that you're somehow immune to this. This trend is not only causing a lot of parents a lot of worry, but it's wasting a lot of time that our law enforcement officers could be spending doing actual work. This is called the 48-hour challenge. The premise is simple. You disappear for up to 48 hours and see how much reaction you can get on social media. You just disappear. Go hide somewhere. Go, hide at a friend's house or something and see what happens. And you get points. Kids who do this get points for every like, share, and other post views about their disappearance. This is like the modern day social media equivalent of, I'll hold my breath until I die and then they'll be sorry. except that it's not funny. Because if your kid does this, as a parent, the stress level is something a child can't understand. I mean, they think they're in total control of their situation, their surroundings, their lives. Which is why at SkyWatchTV and me personally, Sharon and I personally, have tried to warn parents every time we see something coming up like this, or stories of how predators use social media to groom children who don't understand the risks they're taking by engaging with somebody over the web that seems to be really nice. Not understanding that it may not be the person you think it is on the other end of that internet connection. And this is getting more and more dangerous as it's easier and easier for these predators to get access to your children, your grandchildren, through devices that are connected to the internet 24 hours a day. Too many of us adults take our smartphones to bed at night. We should not allow our children to do that because they just don't have the frame of reference. Their frontal lobes are not quite developed yet. And they're may make decisions that are unwise, that put them in jeopardy without you even knowing it. 40 years ago, 45 years ago, my parents wouldn't allow certain people past the front door after dark if they didn't know who they were, certainly. But we do that all the time now without even thinking about it because our kids have smartphones and tablets with cameras on them that they take to bed at night. And all hours of the night can be talking to people that we don't even know. And now this new challenge. Disappear for 48 hours and see what happens. And get points for how badly you scare those who love you. This is really stupid. And not only is it really cruel, and maybe this is the lesson to pass on to children before they try this because they think, hey, this is really neat. It's really cruel. But it also wastes the time of law enforcement. Police officers get called in to start looking for kids. And they're doing that instead of being available when somebody really needs help. And of course, depending on the case, the kids could wind up facing some charges and having stuff go on their record. So the 48-hour social media challenge, just be aware of it. In fact, here's a suggestion. If you've got a young person with a smartphone, just a couple of times a week, ask them to hand it over and go through all their social media apps to see who they're talking to, who they're chatting with, who they're texting, what kind of pictures are on their phone, what kind of pictures are being sent to them. Yeah, it may not be comfortable the first time or two that you do it. They might be embarrassed. But the barriers between you and the outside world have been bypassed. The internet allows predators who want to groom children a way to tunnel under your defenses, get around your border wall, and right into the lives of your kids before you know they're even there. So, something to be aware of. The 48-hour challenge, just the latest challenge going around on the interwebs that is drawing kids in who don't really understand the gravity of the situation. Coming up, we're going to talk about a couple of young men who spent some time with cameras walking the footsteps of truth, footsteps of lost truth, in a dry and dusty land, specifically Israel and Jordan. We'll talk about a travelogumentary. What does that word even mean? With Ty Towriss and Dr. Aaron Judkins. That's next on A View from the Bunker.
For thousands of years, the world has heard warning that there is a coming day when the man of sin, the Antichrist, will arise to pilot the greatest deception in human history. Prepare yourself now for what is ahead with the coming Third Temple Collection. This incredible assortment features Dr. Thomas Horn's new book, The Rabbis, Donald Trump, and the Top Secret Plan to Build the Third Temple, where you'll learn why many believe President Trump is a King Cyrus-like figure, guided by Hashem, God himself. The connection between Donald Trump, rabbis, and a behind-the-scenes scheme to erect the Third Temple. And how this, as the book of Daniel prophesied, will be the catalyst that precedes the apocalypse and arrival of Antichrist. All this and so much more. This unbelievable collection also includes best-selling author Carl Gallups' brand new book, The Rabbi, The Secret Message, and the Identity of Messiah, which reveals how Israel's most venerated Orthodox rabbi, Yitzhak Kaduri, came face-to-face with the true Messiah and said that it was Jesus Christ. You may know that much of the story, but now you can learn what's happened since. Discover the secrets, witness tampering, intimidation tactics, global media, and powerful personalities who will stop at nothing, including death threats and even ritualistic curses to cover up this new stunning revelation. But we're just getting started. The coming Third Temple collection also includes Shelley Neese's new book, The Copper Scroll Project, that highlights the decades-long quest to uncover Qumran's greatest secrets, the lost treasures of the Jerusalem Temple. Hold on to your hats as you'll also discover how the Dead Sea Scrolls were merely the tip of the archaeological iceberg as Jim Barfield's Copper Scroll Project tethers to Israel's modern battle for the Temple Mount, and how the secrets contained in the Copper Scroll, the most enigmatic of the Dead Sea Scrolls, might hold the key to one of the greatest treasures in Israel's history. But that's not all. You'll also receive the best of the first annual Blessed Hope Prophecy Conference on DVD. This 2-disc DVD collection is jam-packed with over 11 hours of mind-boggling revelations from presenters like Dr. Thomas Horn on deep state saboteurs and the secret destiny of America, Sharon Gilbert on the return of the ancients through pharmakia, necromancy, and virtual reality, Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis on the inside war against President Trump by elite secret societies, and unforgettable presentations from celebrated theologian Dr. Michael Lake, Derek P. Gilbert, Josh Peck, and more. Also included in this amazing collection, the original 4-week investigative Skywatch television series regarding the coming Third Temple on DVD, featuring Carl Gallups, Shelley Neese, and Dr. Thomas Horn. Sold separately, these items hold a retail value of $180. Yours now for your donation of only $30 plus shipping and handling. Now's your chance to save big. The coming Third Temple collection, available now at SkyWatch TV Store. Order online or call 844-750-4985.
Shall we begin?
Let's begin now.
Driving the internet to think. This is A View from the Bunker live on Sunday night. I'm Derek Gilbert. Coming up in the next hour, a new artificial intelligence text generator has been created, and its creators say it's too dangerous to let it loose on the world. We'll talk about that in our final segment tonight after 8:30 p.m. Now we're joined by a couple of guys who just produced a film, a new genre I think they've created called the travelogumentary, and it's about, two of my favorite subjects. Number one, the Holy Land, and number two, archaeology. First, we'll bring in the president of NLX Broadcast Design, and he's got a new website set up to gives, I guess, a hub for the films, if that's correct, footstepsoflosttruth.com. We welcome Ty Towriss to the program for the first time. Ty, good to meet you.
Hi, Derek. Thanks for having me.
And a fellow who's been a guest on this program several times before. Last time we talked with him with his buddy Bruce Hall about the new discovery at the newest scroll cave at Qumran among the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the maverick archaeologist who provides the academic rigor for this new venture, Dr. Aaron Judkins. Aaron, welcome back.
Hi, Derek. Thanks for having me back.
Really enjoyed your film. This is available now at Vimeo for rental on a 30-day basis. It's called Footsteps of Lost Truth, Qumran to Petra. Ty, what is, if you had to define it in, say, an elevator pitch, a travelogumentary?
A travel vlogumentary would be the more exact term, had I thought it through even better. But it's really a lot of selfie-driven video interspersed with some well-produced setup segments and a lot of really beautiful drone shots and scenery. And, it's a way to just join with us wherever we could stick a camera. Join us on our backpacking whirlwind tour through the Jordan Valley, Israel first and then Jordan, then back up through Jerusalem. Just come with us and tag along for the ride, and hopefully you will enjoy it. It's a very lighthearted, entertaining, yet honest trip that we take, and we share a lot with each other about what we think. When you're touring those ruins in that part of the country, and of course, if you're a fan of the Bible, and the history of the Bible, the Bible comes alive to you all of a sudden. It's no longer just stories, and it's bound to conjure up a conversation, a heartfelt conversation between the individuals who are experiencing that together, and that's what Aaron and I hope bring to you in this film.
Now, Aaron, you had some really nice segments there at Qumran where you talked to Dr. Randall Price and some of the other folks on the dig, Bruce Hall and others. How did this come together? Was this something that you guys had planned, or was this something that just developed because you were going to be on this dig anyway and say, hey, Ty, come on over with your cameras and we'll see what happens?
Well, I had invited Ty to come to the dig, but unfortunately the dig was so locked down. The security was really tight. There were archaeologists, Derek, who could not get onto that site. And so unfortunately I couldn't get Ty on the site, but Ty was going to be out there, and so he had a week of going out and doing some other filming, but towards the end we met up. And I asked Ty to come along, and we decided towards the end of that dig, let's team up and let's go hit some other sites and go do some filming and just have some fun,
Now,
So
admit it, Ty, you just paid Dr. Price to say it was filled up so you didn't have to climb into one of those caves, right?
Hey, I did not relish the idea of crawling around in those sharp, jagged rocks. And, you saw the gear those guys were wearing. I mean, Bruce Hall looked like he'd just come out of a 2-a-day football practice, for probably a Division II team, I would say. But anyway, those guys were roughed up at the end of the day, and I was glad to just be waiting on them down there with my cameras. That was as much sweat as I was willing to pour into that.
Well, Aaron described the process of climbing into the cave last year when we talked about it, or was it 2 years ago now when when you guys came out of with the new cave discovery, Aaron, and just describing some of the tight spaces you had to crawl into. What's it like getting into one of those caves there, the archaeologist's world? What is it like when you're having to dig into one of those places at Qumran?
Yeah, that was back in 2017.
Okay,
and those caves. They're up on the side of a mountain in Qumran. There's hundreds of caves in this area in the northern Engedi, but these caves are hard to get to. They're steep, they're sharp rocks, there's these rocks that just will, tear you up if you fall. And some of these caves that we went to explore in the immediate vicinity, I had to crawl through I had to get down on my belly and my hands and knees and squirm through some of these holes, and then opened up into a big cave. But certainly these caves are dangerous. They're hard to get to. It Ty's right. It is, at the end of the day, you're coming out of there and you're just beat. I mean, you've been digging all day in this dust, and you're talking, critters that have lived in this cave, for, who knows how long. And so you're stirring up all that dust, and you got to wear a dust mask all day. And I mean, it's really a tiring, taxing work. But it's very difficult to get into these caves. And matter of fact, one of the last groups that went up to a higher cave, and they had to take ropes to get up and down, and actually belay down, coming back down from the cave. It's very steep, and so these caves are very difficult to get to.
Yeah, I think I'd be with Ty. I'll be the guy with the camera at the waiting at the bottom of the mountain there. So as an archaeologist, Aaron, I can understand your interest in wanting to go into those caves and dig around in there. But Ty, what is your interest? What was it that motivated you to want to go there and even just take pictures of this stuff?
Wow, that's a very. I'll try to summarize this as best as I can. I mean, my first trip to Israel was back in 2011, And it was right after a very, I'll say, an evening in my backyard where I felt the presence of the Almighty kind of calling me out of the situation I was in. I would say it was a life-altering experience, and it was not very long after that I found myself over in Israel with a small group of 4 people. And it was kind of a go to I use the phrase ground zero, but as far as biblical upbringing and church teachings, I needed to go to the epicenter of it all, and I needed to begin to see with my own eyes. And so it began in 2011. I'd taken a few trips over there, and there was actually a Footsteps of Lost Truth 1.0 at one time. This is the reinvented, recreated Footsteps of Lost Truth 2.0. And there was a plan to go over there with some of Aaron's buddies I'd met over there in Texas, a couple of guys who were into fossils, and one guy by the name of Joe Taylor. And we had a plan all mapped out, and it turned out a week before the trip, an illness set in with Joe, and he wasn't able to make the trip, and that whole contingent had to back out a week before the trip. And we had already spent a lot of time logistically trying to plan for 3 or 4 different agendas and content for different series that everyone kind of wanted. And I was kind of the guy trying to get everybody's stuff mapped out so we could get it all filmed. And then those guys had to bail a week before the trip, and that left me kind of tail tucked between my legs, hanging my head, just wondering and asking God, what do you want me to do here? I mean, I feel like that every time I take a few steps forward on this, I'm just met with so many barriers and challenges. And I just felt the Lord speak to me and say, "You're going to get on the plane. You're going to go by yourself." And Aaron's invitation was still standing. So yeah, I went out. I just felt the call to go. This is the first time I'd ever traveled by myself to any place, really, just by myself. I mean, I'd been to other countries, but always with a group or with a small group of friends. But I just got on the plane myself and began to kind of map it out on the fly using, like Airbnb and using Booking.com and, getting on the ground and taking the train to the nearest city that had a rental car place that wasn't so expensive. A little secret, if you go to Israel and you take the train up to Ben Jamina, you can get a car for a lot less than you can at the airport. There's a little travel secret. And that's kind of what this trip ended up being. It ended up being a trip where the Lord spoke to me as I was there and said, I do want you to do footsteps, but I want you to change it up. It's not going to be the heavy exegetical, deep theological, dissecting of scriptural passages. This is going to be about my people and about having fun and about meeting people along the way and learning their stories. I want you to tell their stories. So this was kind of a foray into that on the ground kind of revelation that I had over there, which every time I've been to Israel, there's been some kind of a revelation. I'm just going to say, I mean, it's not a place where you go on a vacation so much as you go and you get revelation. But that's kind of why that's the story behind me getting on the plane and going over. And there's some more content from the front half of my trip where I go up into the Golan and I meet up with an Orthodox Jewish fella and his new bride, and they took me in, allowed me to stay with them over a Shabbat weekend.
Wow!
And that was I mean, here's this guy with suitcases and backpacks full of wires and batteries and electronics and wireless mic packs and computers and hard drives and cameras, and all this stuff has to be charged. All this stuff has to be, the media has to be transferred. It all has to be tended to. And this is happening on a Shabbat when all that stuff gets shut down. You're not supposed to fire up those things. So they were very gracious with me and allowed me my own room, my own non-compliant, unorthodox room in their apartment where it was okay to fire up the electronics. And so there's going to be more content coming from that part of the trip. I actually go up to the top of Mount Hermon in January and experience what they tell me was the best ski day of the entire season. Go skiing off the top of Mount Hermon and just share what that experience is like. You never imagine Abraham might have been looking at the land of Canaan for the first time and maybe having to wear snowshoes. No one ever imagines that.
Yeah, it's a little surprising when Americans find out that if they've even heard of Mount Hermon, that, the Israelis have a ski resort there. It's like, wait, isn't that the place where the Watchers came down and decided to make Nephilim? Yeah. And they're skiing off of that now. Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And so that's a little bit of the background there. I'll turn it back over to Aaron, to take it from the Qumran part. But I had a day to kick it around there in Jerusalem, and then up into the Golan and some places Aaron tipped me off to go to. And so there will be more content coming. Aaron's not with me on that part of the trip, but I plan to bring him in as kind of an expert. Some post-interview types of segments where he can provide some content for the next upcoming round. Footsteps of Lost Truth from the Golan and from Mount Hermon.
We're talking to Ty Towriss, filmmaker, and archaeologist Dr. Aaron Judkins. Their travelogumentary, Footsteps of Lost Truth, Qumran to Petra, here on A View from the Bunker. Aaron, Qumran, we've talked about this before, but for people who didn't hear that interview, what's the significance of Qumran and the Dead Sea Scrolls?
Well, Qumran is the area right near the Dead Sea that in 1947 they found the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, this was found by two local Bedouin shepherd children, and they were herding their goats through the area. One of the goats got lost, and in an effort to try to locate the goat, they thought he had went up in this cave, and so he took a rock and he threw it up in there, and he heard the sound of cracking pottery. And his interest peaked, and he crawled through the hole. He didn't find the goat in the cave, but he did find one of the greatest archaeological finds of the 20th century, and that is what we now know as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Unfortunately, the Bedouins weren't interested in scrolls. They were interested in the pots, because a pot is useful for them, and so they chunked scrolls and took the pots. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just laughing about that. It all, I guess, depends on your point of view. What is useful to you today, and you can understand for them their point of view why that would be. Hey, we can do something with these things, but this old moldy paper that's inside, that's no good,
right? Well, they ended up going back and taking some of the scrolls, and it sat outside of a tent hanging on a pole for a couple of years. Fortunately, the area is 1,600 feet below sea level. So, there's really no concern about moisture. But finally someone has suggested, hey, you need to go take these scrolls into one of the dealers in town and let them look at it. And so, the pots weren't cooking pots, though. They were very thin pottery. We call it Qumran pottery, because it's Second Temple period pottery from Qumran. This is the clay from Qumran, and so these pots weren't designed to be cooked in or to drink out of. These were strictly to hold the scrolls, very light. So they really couldn't use the pots. But when they understood the value of the scrolls, then it became a race against the archaeologist to find more. Why? Because they get this whole scroll, but a fragment of that scroll is worth a huge amount of money. And so they began to search the area caves for more. Unfortunately, there was not enough archaeologists. Roland DeVoe was the first to go in there and try to excavate, but the Bedouins got to a lot of the caves before the archaeologists could.
Well, yeah, people need to remember that in 1947 and 48, there was a war going on there. And so it was not exactly a place where archaeologists could get into easily.
Yeah.
Well, and that's true. This was Jordanian territory. It was prior to the nation of Israel, and so
that was declared in May of 48. But on our tour last year, we learned something about the fighting that took place in May of 48 as Israel declared independence. So in that whole period of time, 47, 48, it was not safe to travel outside of Jerusalem. Really not. Just getting from Jerusalem to Hebron was taking your life in your hands.
Right.
So,
well, and that's a very clear point. Wow. Even in 49, even after the change when the nation of Israel became recognized, the Jordanians still claimed the Qumran area, what we would call the West, that part of that West Bank area.
Israel didn't get that until 1967.
Right, and even today, Derek, they still make claims to this area of Qumran and to the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Right.
What's interesting, if I could expound on this a little bit, is the timing of the discovery of these scrolls, of the Dead Sea Scrolls, from 1947 all the way up to about 1957 or 1959 in 11 caves was clearly prophetic. Why? Because the scrolls remained hidden for anyone to find in 2,000 years of history. And on the very day in 1947, on November 29, when Israel's rebirth was confirmed, a Jewish professor confirmed the existence of ancient Israel in the scrolls. And so we know on May 14th, 1948, Israel became an independent nation. But this is very important because the scrolls have proved in archaeology that ancient Israel had a past. And in that past, it goes way back before Christianity. We're talking about BC. And so these are clearly written from the Jewish context. And a lot of the scrolls were even they're not even biblical. They're non-biblical scrolls. And so there was a lot that we found in that time period. And over the decades, when those scrolls finally became translated, we understood that every book of the Old Testament, with the exception of the book of Esther, was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
That's right, yeah.
Plus numerous other books, like the book of Enoch. Mm-hmm. It's very exciting. So for us to go back over there was really a historic initiative by Israel.
Now, Ty, you got some really, really great images there. How did you set up and change your approach to filming from Footsteps of Lost Truth 1.0 to 2.0? And I ask that because when my wife and I did our little, and I wish I'd thought of the word first because I think it's perfect, travelogumentary. We did our travelogue of our tour last May. We basically shot everything with a couple of iPads and our iPhones. And we were planning on doing something similar this year, but we were talking with other guys who said, oh, no, you got to take this kind of camera and that kind of camera, and you need lighting and you need these microphones. It's like, we don't want to carry all that on a plane. So I'm just curious because the video footage from Qumran to Petra is really, it's really, really crisp. It's beautifully shot. So how did you do it? What kind of equipment did you take?
Well, you're asking me to give away the tools of my trade here. Okay. No, that's fine. I mean, today's toys today's photographic toys are getting so compact. And, now I did have a drone with me on this trip. I had 2 drones actually with me on this trip. And since that trip, I now have even a more compact little drone that takes just as good of pictures and looks like a toy. And it's 4K, beautiful, stunning footage. So the technology is there. But, just to answer your question, I mean, anyone can go out and buy GoPros. The GoPros look fantastic. The 4K is available for you, and all of those, wide angle, you point, and you can't miss the shot. That's basically what you saw at Petra. You saw GoPro-orama at Petra. I mean, it was like selfie sticks with GoPros. Now, the key is now in other segments, that were more produced. I had a DSLR camera. I had a Panasonic GH5 with me, and a couple of different lenses, telephoto, and then a wide angle. And with those lenses and with that hardware, I should say, with that sensor and those cameras, you can pull off kind of the shallow depth of field and kind of get more of a professional shot. So this is a mix between, what I would call professionally lit and framed up shots and just run and gun. I would say the most of it's run and gun. But yeah, I mean, a smattering of GoPros, and the trick is having the mounts to do whatever you want. So yeah, I had a couple of gimbals with me. Had 2 different gimbals. I had 2 drones. I had 3 different GoPro-like cameras, and I had a DSLR and a backup DSLR. So I was traveling with seven cameras that somehow I'd figured out how to stuff all that into. Don't ask me how many times I wore the same pair of underwear or anything like that. But I mean, I would just say that I had mostly cameras and mics, and for the audio, the key is that the audio is something that audiences will not tolerate bad audio.
Yeah.
They will tolerate a shaky handheld shot or something. Video can be kind of degraded or whatever, but poor audio, you're losing people. And so, my quest was to make sure that we were always mic'd up, and I always had wireless mics feeding an audio recorder that was always recording, always. I mean, there are segments of the trip that are just all audio. But yeah, marrying up the audio to the video later on. I mean, that to me, the key is the audio needs to be clean. It needs to, unfortunately, up on top of Qumran, Aaron said I wasn't allowed to go up there. So I said, hey, Aaron, here's a GoPro. Take the GoPro up there. So all that up there, you're hearing a lot of wind noise and everything. There's really nothing I could do about that. But yeah, that was what the GoPro did fine up there. I mean, GoPro does great on a nice day, and we had a nice day up there with Aaron pointing that GoPro around, and that was all Aaron's filming. So I give Aaron the photog credit on that part up on top of Qumran.
How hard was that for you as a filmmaker, a videographer, to say, okay, I don't need the big cameras anymore. I can make it work with these little GoPros?
Well, not hard at all when you consider I went over there by myself, and I basically had a backpack stuffed to the gills with as many lenses as I could possibly fit in it, and backups, and of course your cards, and you got to have a way to transfer the media at night, clean the cards, and recharge the batteries. So, for me, kind of I come out of sports television, and I'm used to the run and gun.
Okay.
Get as much as you can get, running out and grabbing a feature on an athlete or something like that. These guys don't tolerate, these athletes don't tolerate the prima donna film producer, looking for the perfect shot. They're like, get in here, get your stuff, and get out of here. That's generally how my life was for many years. Doing features and promos and commercials that involved, Major League Baseball players, the NBA basketball players. Is like, get in there, get it, and get out of there.
Yeah.
So I'm used to that, and so it's not a problem for me. Now I have a lot. The Atlanta market's hot with film producers and film and film cinematographers. And I have a lot of friends who are in that side of the business, and, I look at their Facebook posts, I see the massive concrete block size cameras that these guys are using on location. And I look at that, and I look at all the wires hanging off and everything, and it just looks like, man, it looks like it takes like 3 guys to move it from one place to the next. And I look at the end result. Of course, at home we're getting a highly compressed version of what it looks like coming out of their camera. But I just don't see a huge difference from a GH5 that's shooting 4K, with a good lens. So I don't know. That was a long answer to your question.
No, that's all right. I asked because I want to, just convey to people that even though this was kind of run and gun, the videography is actually very good. And you're right. I did notice the audio, but I'm coming from a radio background, so that's something I listen for. That's one area where Sharon and I didn't quite we didn't have the equipment, but neither one of us come from a videography background either. So, but anyway, we're talking about the film, the travelogumentary, Footsteps of Lost Truth, Qumran to Petra. Ty Towriss, the filmmaker, the archaeologist, Dr. Aaron Judkins. When we come back, we're going to talk about their trip to Jordan, Wadi Rum and Petra, what they saw there, what was impressive about it, and then we'll kind of bring it all home and wrap it up. Why this was an important project, and where you can see it, of course. Stick with us. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is A View from the Bunker. new take on the prophesied war of Gog and Magog. Forget about Russia coming from the uttermost parts of the north. The enemy foreseen by the prophet Ezekiel is so much bigger and so much older. It's Last Clash of the Titans by Derek P. Gilbert, a #1 new release in Amazon's Christian history category. Last Clash of the Titans breaks down step by step how Greek mythology grew out of Canaanite religion, why the old gods of the Greeks, the Titans, were the watchers who descended on the summit of Mount Hermon, and why the Titans will return from the abyss for one final battle against God, Armageddon. Last Clash of the Titans, backed up by peer-reviewed academic research. Tom Horn calls this book stunning. Last Clash of the Titans, the second coming of Hercules, Leviathan, and the prophesied war between Jesus Christ and the gods of antiquity. Get it as part of a special offer at SkyWatchTVStore.com and available now in paperback and as a Kindle ebook at Amazon.com. One man, one microphone, and a deep-seated psychological need to tell the world what he thinks. This is A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. Joining us tonight, an archaeologist who's climbed Mount Ararat and descended into the caves of Qumran. Dr. Aaron Judkins and his filmographer and partner in the Footsteps of Lost Truth video series, their first entry, Qumran to Petra, Ty Towriss. Gentlemen, welcome back. Aaron, you guys, after visiting the caves at Qumran, and then you did a nice tour of Masada, which was, I thought, one of the most fascinating parts of our tour last May. You crossed the border and spent some time at Aqaba, and then up to the area that in ancient times was called Edom, the Red Desert. Why did you choose to go to Wadi Rum and Petra as part of this video tour?
Well, this is an area that the children of Israel came through on their way up out of the Exodus to try to get up to the Promised Land. And so Wadi Rum is an area that really I don't think a lot of people know about. Even people who go to Petra go probably right past Wadi Rum. They don't even know that it's there. Mm-hmm. This is an area where Lawrence of Arabia was back in World War I, who tried to unite the tribes. But this is a large wadi. This is a ancient dry riverbed. It's the largest one in Jordan, and it extends all the way up from Arabia. And we think this is an area in Wadi Rum where the Israelites coming through with 1 million people, 1.5 million people, certainly could hold these people as they progressed up from that area up to the King's Highway, where Moses asked if the king of Edom if he could pass. And remember, the king said, "No, you're not going to pass." And Moses said, "We need to pass through the King's Highway. We're going to pay for the water. We're not going to turn to the left or to the right, but we do need to pass through." And the king of Edom said, "No." Sent a letter back, and Moses replied, "We're going to pass anyway, and we're going to pay for the water." And they did. Remember, those people got cut off in the rear, and several people were killed that were coming, from the rear end of them coming up through this area.
The rear of the column,
yeah. So this is an area that is huge. It's a vast area. The landscape is unbelievable there. This is an area that has these red sand dunes all over the place, and you got these plateaus, and it's just remarkable how they got through there. But certainly an area big enough what the Bible describes east of the Edomite mountains. And so we went to go look at that and explore that. And then on to Petra. Of course, right through there's the King's Highway. And of course, Petra is a Greek term meaning the rock. And the Hebrew equivalent is Selah. Mm-hmm. This is the Edomite city talked about in the Bible called Mount Seir. And Mount Seir means hairy. In advance, God knows that Esau would be, a hairy individual, I guess. And so this would be the home of Esau. So the first biblical account of Petra is in Genesis 14. And so this is an area that has a lot of biblical history to it. And Ty and I wanted to go back over to Petra. I've been there before several times, but to go through just without a tour with you and another guy and really soaking in all of Petra. We went all the way through that thing, all the way clear to the back. And, of course, you can't see everything, but this is an area that has a huge biblical significance. It talks about in 1 Samuel where Saul led Israel against Moab and Ammon and Edom and overcame them. And so a lot of history right here where Petra and Wadi Rum is located.
Yeah, I was surprised to find out, as you mentioned, Aaron, that the Bible mentions a couple of battles that took place at Selah. In fact, King Azariah, I believe, of Judah, defeated Edom and threw 10,000 Edomites from the top of the rock there at Selah, according to, well, I forget where it is in the Old Testament now, but one of the Chronicles. Ty, as I was watching this, and again, we went through Wadi Rum in May and then visited Petra as well. I thought I recognized one of the Bedouin tents that you guys visited, where you got the tea and the stuff. I mean, was that in that box canyon there with the carved picture of the engraving of T.E. Lawrence on the rock at the entrance to the little canyon there?
Well, I am not entirely sure. I'm trying to recall if I saw such a thing. Aaron, is he talking about the same place?
I think it's different.
Okay.
I think it's a different area, but it's so wide, it's such a vast area out there. Ty and I was out there for half a day, so we didn't get a full day experience out there.
We were just there for half a day as well, and they took us into one area where they've got a semi-permanent Bedouin camp there, but there's this big commemorative rock in the front, and somebody back in 1917 carved the face of T.E. Lawrence of Arabia on one side of the rock, and then on another side they carved the face of the first king of, I guess it would have been the king of Jordan, or the Hashemite king, King Abdullah. But then on a rock on the ground, the really big face was the face of the the sheikh who led the tribe that Lawrence used to rebel against the Ottoman Empire. But it was a really interesting experience. It looked very similar anyway. They did the tea over the fire in the middle of the tent.
Oh yeah. They have these areas set up. I think they're all throughout there, and you can even go out there and spend the night in these tents and overnight. And the Bedouins was telling us that the stars out there were just incredible on these clear nights. And I think you can even ride camels out a little ways.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a whole experience you can do out there. It really is an amazing place to go. That was my first time in Wadi Rum, and you'll see in the film as we go out, these areas are really incredible. But certainly, if you didn't know where you were going, you would probably just, it was a very inhospitable area. I can tell you that.
Well, it would certainly give you reason to think that maybe the Israelites weren't so unusual after all, complaining about walking around in the desert when you look and all you can see is a little scrub here and there and a bunch of big rocks. We were told that this is where they filmed the movie The Martian with Matt Damon because of all of the red. They didn't really have to color correct the color of the ground out there because it was already red.
Right.
Yeah.
We do a little piece, a small segment where Aaron mentions that, and I do roll in a couple of trailer clips from The Martian inside the film. I think enough in the fair use to qualify. So, but yes, when we were in Aqaba, we visited a hotel. We didn't stay there. Again, we stayed with indigenous folks. Well, I take that back. Here, we were staying with expatriates who are now making Jordan their home, who have citizenship in Jordan. And for me, the most favorite part about Jordan for me was the people we encountered. I had somehow through 3 or 4 degrees of separation connection, was able to locate person and gave them a call and sent them a video. And boy, they just rolled out the welcoming mat for Aaron and I in Aqaba, a group there. The Ryan family. It's a family of how many? Like 8 kids. So a 10-person family of Americans living full time in Jordan, and felt called to go live there. And they're doing this based on some biblical prophecy about the end times.
Wow.
And Craig explained to me and showed me the passages as to why they're there and what they are doing. So these are pioneers, they believe, pioneers in setting up a place of refuge, what they believe is a place of refuge for end times type events. I don't want to go more into it than that. I didn't spend any time on that in the film, but I can just tell you that the Ryan family welcoming Aaron and I into their home with eight children, and finding a place for us to bunk down for the night, and then Craig and his oldest son Jordan joined us for our trip up to Wadi Rum and to Petra, is part of the treasure of people part of this film that I hope comes through. And I try to emphasize that throughout the entire film, that we're running into people where the treasure find is them. And that they certainly qualify. And Craig and Jordan were just a blast to hang out with. But yeah, the Bedouins that we encountered were just the most gracious hosts, and so concerned about our comfort and are we having a good time. And we paid these guys a little something, but it wasn't. I mean, I felt like they were really rolling out an accommodation package for us, and we were just nobodies coming through there. And what do you think, Aaron?
Well, every time I've been with the Bedouins, they've always been very gracious. They will give you, whatever will make you comfortable, and they'll even invite you. I've been invited into tents and sat around campfires in the Sinai with the Bedouins, overnighting in the desert. Ty's right. It's the people that we encounter along this trip. And Ty said early on, this is really not a heavy theological documentary film. This is something that was new for me. I mean, my last film was Finding Noah. And, this was a film done, by heavy hitters in Hollywood, and a very serious film. It went to 15 different countries and so many states, I think 15 or 20 states. And we couldn't get it all in the film, but this film, Qumran to Petra, certainly is a different feel. I had so much fun with Ty, coming down from that dig in Qumran and digging for weeks and just working just in that cave. And it was great. As an archaeologist, you live for that. But coming down from that and going to the sites of, we go to Masada, we talk and we go up on top, we talk about what happened there. We show you around Masada, then we go over into Wadi Rum and then Wadi Musa over at Petra. Mm-hmm. And we talk about these places. And, like Ty said, we run into people sometimes unexpectedly. And really it's about the journey, the travel, the experience of the biblical Holy Land of not just Israel, but the ancient biblical lands that surround Israel. And that's going into Jordan. So I thought this was such a fun film, and it's well produced. Ty did a wonderful job.
Oh, agreed.
I'm very pleased with it, and he tells a story. And as a filmmaker, it's hard to do, to tell a story, and I think he did a wonderful job. When you watch the film, you're really going to enjoy 90 minutes of an area. I think that is so different than what you ever seen. It's got little pieces of nuggets of truth in it, of facts and things like that, but it's mixed in with a lot of fun and a lot of humor.
We're talking.
One of the blurbs on the FLT website, that was just crafted over the course organically, is that this is a lighthearted, entertaining, and honest survey and parallel search for truth about man, about God, seeking near and far for the treasure and understanding, where the treasure find is most often the people. So we don't make light of that aspect of this trip. It's the people we encounter, and that's going to be a continuing theme in the Footsteps series.
Well, I think that really came through. We're talking with Aaron Judkins and Ty Towriss, who are featured in the new travelogumentary Footsteps of Lost Truth, Qumran to Petra, here on A View from the Bunker. And it really comes across as just basically hanging out with you guys as you kind of go on this adventure. It's not really a structured, scheduled thing. Unlike the tour that Sharon and I were part of it. and so we were kind of limited as to, and not that I felt like we didn't get, more than we expected out of our tour. But, when you're on a schedule, you've got to, be on the bus at a certain time, get off the bus. You got so many minutes to go. You got 100 people there, and you got to wait in line for the restroom. And, that was like the number one thing with our group because most of us are 50s and older. Is there a bathroom at the Valley where David fought Goliath? Yes, there's a bathroom there. So that kind of changes your itinerary just a little bit. But so your approach was different. It was very comfortable to watch, and just watching the fun you had, watching the people that you met and how you interacted with them and hit it off with them, and especially when you got to Petra. And I thought that was really interesting. Sharon and I, when we're going back in May, we're definitely going deeper into Petra than we went the first time. We only had a half a day, and we only basically got just past the treasury, and we did not climb to look down on the treasury as you did in the film. So, Ty, who was this guy Ali, and is he credentialed by OSHA or, the National Health and Safety? Because it looked to me like you guys were taking your lives in your hands, climbing that path to get up on above the treasury.
Well, just to let you know, I mean, if you watch the film and you study Ali, and you look closely, the guy's wearing flip-flops as he's just literally skirting across these cliff tops as he's wearing flip-flops. And Aaron even makes the comment that he does it in flip-flops. I don't even know how, but Ali knows his way around back there. And, it was one of those, I just want to say appointed encounters where we were out there, we were looking to go in, and Ali was out there. And, I didn't get the feel from this guy. I've been to Petra before, and I've been there during high. Another secret to this is we were not there during high season. If you look, like up on top of Masada, we're like the only guys up there.
Yeah, so I noticed that.
January.
I noticed that.
There's a good tip. There's another good travel tip there. If you think going to Israel in January is going to be a bust, well, I'm telling you, this is the best trip I've ever had in my life, ever, in any place I've ever gone. And but yeah, being back over to Petra, it's not high season, so therefore, most of the guys that are hanging out are just guys who are there, and Ali just seemed to be a genuine guy. He didn't charge us an arm and a leg. As a matter of fact, Aaron, if I recall, he didn't even want to take any money at the end.
No, he didn't. And we can put you in touch with him, Derek. Yeah. I'm still in contact with him.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Well,
I'm not that ambitious.
We roll out a new book called, Ty and Aaron's Contacts in Israel and Jordan. So that'd probably do better than the documentary.
Yeah.
Anyway, or the travelogumentary. Sorry.
Well, no, I tell you, there is an area that we want to go to, which is the area up above the treasury, the so-called treasury, because I understand that was there's like a couple of pylons up there, and that area up there had been used as a religious site at some point in the past. But if the path looks anything like the one that you took to get where you were, we ain't going.
Yeah, I mean, I make the comment that Ali has to pick people who he thinks are capable of making this entry into Petra. I had to be borderline. I mean, he had to look at me and go, okay, 3 of these guys, I know that one guy over there, at the very least, the other 3 guys can carry him out on a stretcher. I mean, that had to be what Ali was thinking. Yeah. So anyway, we made it. But yeah, I make the comment. It's like, man, not just anybody can go this way. I mean, you really have to have some degree of physical strength and stamina to make it up over the top, especially if you're going to go down, if you're going to descend down to the treasury from where we were. But man, it was such a payoff. I'm telling you, it was such a payoff, especially when, he's walking us in and he's telling us to close our eyes.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, no, I'm sorry. There's no railing. I'm not closing my eyes. No way.
You want me to walk towards the
I was
cliff,
cringing
have my eyes
watching.
closed.
I was cringing watching you guys. I mean, the camera was still on, but I was cringing watching you guys. Like, oh.
Yeah. I didn't catch it at first because my eyes were closed and I was approaching the cliff side of 500 foot above the treasury, which is a sheer drop, by the way, with no rails. I mean, this is all natural, formation, rock formation. Mm-hmm. And Ty said one of the greatest lines in the film, just impromptu, as we're approaching the cliffside, he said, "There's not something to Moloch down there, is there?" And when I caught that, going back into post-production, and I laughed so hard on that. He said it in jest, but it was a wonderful experience. And if you're capable, going down is actually, I think, harder because some of those drops are 6-8 foot drops. You got to go down. Mm-hmm. But if you're capable of making that trip up, overlooking the treasury, it's a wonderful. A wonderful view of seeing it from the top down, and of course, then you walk down to the front. You're right there at the foot of the treasury. And Ty and I did that on the first day. It was very late in the afternoon. We had a few hours, and we just happened to meet this guy named Ali. And he was very gracious and he called it the Indiana Jones route. It's off the beaten path, and then you're going up and over. And Ty and I just got so blessed on this trip. And I think it's going to bless the viewer. And that's really what we wanted to do with this. We didn't really know exactly how we were going to put it together. But Ty did a wonderful job. And it took Ty about a year of post-production work to put this together. This trip was not funded.
The caveat there is that I have another job. I mean, I work full time in my industry, so therefore, this work for both Aaron and me is our while it's our passion, it's a spare time thing. It's when we can fit it in amidst full time work and then the other aspects of life. So, that's where we're trying to get. Aaron and I love to do this so much. We're just really hoping that this can snowball and become, something that someone will take interest in and go, you know what, those guys are onto something there. Mm-hmm. I hope so. We love to do this. Everything else pales in comparison for us. We're very passionate about it, and this is what we love to do. Unfortunately, we have to do other things to earn our way in life and make a living.
Yeah, it's no, I totally get that. We're blessed in that we Sharon and me get paid to research and write, so we're blessed in that regard. But these trips are just like icing on the cake. So let's talk
Eric,
a little bit
I heard your comment earlier on one of your other podcasts where you're like, I can't wait to retire so I could do what I really want to do.
It's. But somebody asked me a couple of months ago, if you could design your perfect job, what would it be? It's like, it's what I'm doing right now. I can't imagine how anybody, even when I retire, there will be other things that we will want to do. And I just can't imagine ever being bored in this life. And yet I know people who are like sharks. If they don't have a job to go to at the end of the, retire, and basically it's just, okay, sit at home and wait for, God to call you home, which I just can't understand. This series, The Footsteps of Lost Truth, you mentioned that you've got some footage from Mount Hermon, which you call what? The redneck ski invasion of Mount Hermon? Was that what's I'm seeing at the website here? Or
Yeah, that's right. It is. It's a little bit interesting. There are some very high eyebrows as we enter the bus to take us from the parking lot up to the ski resort.
Yeah.
As I'm walking in with wires hanging off of me and what looks to be like what could be maybe possibly some kind of a vest of some sort. I mean, people are looking at me like, whoa, this guy needs to be checked out.
Oh yeah.
But fortunately, I had Shim Shon Cook with me. And he was able to set people at ease and say, no, he's with me. He's fine. He would speak in Hebrew to people. He's like, oh, he's fine. He's a filmmaker. He's a very much a selfie-driven filmmaker, therefore the reason for all the wires and batteries hanging off of him. But yeah, that makes people nervous in Israel when you got a guy walking around with batteries and wireless mic packs and things sticking out. That's not a inviting person to be close to.
No, I can imagine that. In fact, I've got a friend who managed to sneak a drone into Jericho, which is not an area that, I mean, you have to drive past the sign in big red letters says if you drive past this area, you may be shot. And yet he got somebody to take him down there, a local, and then started flying a drone around in Jericho. It's like, are you crazy?
Wow, good for him. Good for him. Good deal.
So what
it is about who you know sometimes.
Yeah. So what other projects are you hoping to produce in the Footsteps of Lost Truth series?
Well, I have some. I have a interesting. My first stop was up in. Oh boy, it's escaping me here. It's up near
Golan Heights.
No. The first stop was in the Carmel before I went over to Golan Heights, and I had the opportunity. This is another last minute. Hey, my plans have fallen through. I booked accommodations for 4 people. Now it's just me, and I had to cancel all those. And I don't have anything booked. And so I reached out to Ephraim and Ramona Frank. Ephraim has written a book. I don't know if you could find it. I don't even know if it's still in print anymore, but I have a copy here. It's called Return to the Land. And it's about, his name's Frank. Frank. And that's the Hebrew version of that's Ephraim. Mm-hmm. So he identifies as an Ephraimite, and so he goes over there and he marries a Jewish woman. This is back in the 70s, and his whole book is about how the land after his first trip to Israel, the land kept drawing him back, and he felt this magnetism, this pull to keep coming back. And he eventually, made that his home and, applied for citizenship. And his whole book is about that whole process and marrying Ramona. So they were. I can't believe I can't think of the name of the town. But it's up there in the Carmel. It's right there in between Jaffa and Ben Jomina, and it's an interesting place to go. There's a lot of history there. So I think that is one segment, and it's interesting to talk to these two because they're very tuned in to the prophetic significance of the Carmel, and that's where they live. And I have a lot of conversations with them as we're walking, as I'm in the back seat of their car and they're driving me around. They are giving me prophetic insight that I have never seen, would not have known to look for. I'm a guy who's raised in church, and I did a year of Bible school or Bible college as a freshman, and decided to transfer out of there and go to a secular university. But I have the foundation there, and these guys, and I've been through the Bible many times, the whole Bible, and I know it okay. I'm not an expert like you, of course, Derek, but
you're too kind.
Well, I don't spend as much time there as I probably should, but these two turned me on to some passages there related to the Carmel with some of the Old Testament prophets that really opened my eyes to developments that we're seeing today. And I look forward to bringing that one out as well. That episode is called Return to the Land. And it really is the story of a man that I've since encountered many people like myself. You hear me on Masada say, every time I come over here, I don't want to leave. I'm compelled. I'm drawn. I'm compelled to come here.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure you have the same guttural feeling, the spiritual inner draw, compulsion to come to the land. Mm-hmm. There's something about the land that draws us there. And I didn't know that till after my first trip. My first trip was simply about going to ground zero of the Bible and seeing with my own eyes and the Lord proving to me the truth of his word in the Bible through that first trip. And since then, it's kind of mushroomed into a place where I would prefer to go over any island beach vacation. My wife's not in agreement with that so much, but I prefer to go to Israel as much as possible because I'm drawn.
They have beaches there. Tel Aviv, they got beaches.
Oh, yeah. At the end of the Mediterranean. Interesting. I hear that all the fish have been picked through by the time they get over there.
Try Sardinia sometime. Ty Towriss and Aaron Judkins are the men behind Footsteps of Lost Truth, their travelogumentary, which, in my view, one of the takeaways that I took from it was that it's a lot easier to get around over there and see things than we Americans think, which is something Sharon and I came away from our tour back in May with anyway. But sadly, fellows, this hour's gone by really quickly. Aaron, very quickly, if people want to see the film Qumran to Petra, how do they do it? Where do they go?
Yeah, they can go to FLT.com. I think that's right, in the Ty, or my website at aaronjudkins.com.
No, it's footstepsoflosttruth.com, or alternatively, they can punch in flt.life. And there is a link there, but to give you the actual real URL, it's vimeo.com/on-demand/Qumran to Petra. But Aaron has provided a link on his website, aaronjudkins.com, and I've provided the same link on my website. It's not hard to get there, and it's a very easy process to go in there and rent the film for $3.95. We ran a 4-day free special as we rolled the thing out and released it. Some people took advantage of that. I wish more had. Our objective is, we'd like to make a little money on this film and kind of recoup some of the costs, but more importantly, we want to get it out there and hopefully put forth the idea that we're going in the footsteps and we're meeting people along the way. And I'll just tell you this, Derek. If I were to have a debate with myself from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, heck, even 5 years ago, I mean, the things that I've learned, the things that I've seen from just getting outside of my own box has caused me to reevaluate, not necessarily what I believe, but to have more grace for what people believe that don't necessarily agree with what I believe.
I agree with you 100%. I felt the same.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Well, the film is Qumran to Petra, Footsteps of Lost Truth. I will put links in the show notes to Aaron's website, to Ty's website, and also a direct link to the Vimeo site for the film. $3.95 for 30-day rental. You can't beat that price. Dr. Aaron Judkins, Ty Towriss, gentlemen, enjoyed the conversation. We'll have to do this again.
Thanks, Derek.
Look forward to it.
Coming up, we're going to talk about an artificial intelligence that its creators say is too dangerous to let out of the lab. Have they created the beginnings of the Terminator scenario? And at the same time we're seeing that, we're also got scientific proof now of the endowmenting of America. It's true. IQs are getting smaller as the machines are getting smarter. That's ahead as A View from the Bunker continues. I'm Derek Gilbert.
For thousands of years, mankind has debated how creation began. Ancient texts tell us the story. But today, the real message behind the pivotal account of the Garden of Eden has been obfuscated and lost. That is, until now. World-renowned author Carl Gallups digs up the hidden truths from the book of Genesis to finally give back the knowledge that was lost to the world. Find out what really happened in the Garden of Eden, what Jesus taught about Eden on the cross, and how the conflict between Jesus and the gods of antiquity is about to erupt on planet Earth, fulfilling biblical prophecy. In the new book, Gods of Ground Zero, this explains everything.
Cooper's dark deeds actually began long before 1888. And it wasn't a mere man who committed the crimes, but a demon in league with devilish men, a group of men called Red Wing. Only one small group of valiant men and women stand against this evil, a group that place their faith in Christ alone, and they protect a secret of blood that Red Wing hopes to use to usher in the reign of Antichrist and the end of day.
Red Wing is called Red Wing because they want to kill the church. They want to forever stop Christ from coming back. So it's the Holy Spirit, the dove, with a murdered, has been slain, a wounded dove. Ultimately, we still have to remember that the one who is in control is God Almighty, and we have to go to Him, and we have to suit up every time we go out.
The Red Wing Saga by Sharon K. Gilbert. Book 1. Blood Lies. Book 2. Blood Rights. Book 3. The Blood is the Life. Book 4. Realms of Stone. And coming soon, Book 5. Realms of Fire. Available at SkyWatchTVStore.com and paperback and Kindle at Amazon.com. Characters you'll love and a story you can't put down. The Red Wing Saga by Sharon K. Gilbert. Talking the Walk every Sunday night. This is A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. Next week, from a miracle healing to award-winning music, and possibly to the TV screen, we talk to the Chrysagas brothers, Sean and Brian. They're our guests next week on A View from the Bunker. That's February 24th. Listen live at VFTB.net. Well, again, I hope you enjoy the conversation with Ty and with Aaron. The subject of archaeology, especially when it comes to the Holy Land, and Jordan in particular, I'm finding to be very, very interesting. I hope you listened to the program a couple of weeks ago with Dr. Philip Sylvia. And if you haven't, go back into the archives at VFTB.net and do it, because the work that the team that they're doing, the team from Trinity Southwest University is doing, at Tal El Hammam, the biblical Sodom, is fascinating. Their dig is going into its fourth week now. Their annual season is in February, and you can find out more at talelhammam.com. I've got a link at VFTB.net, the program with Dr. Sylvia. They do need support in order to finance the dig, because they're not one of the major universities out there, but they're doing some incredible work there, documenting the scientific evidence showing that area was where the air blast, the explosion in the air, took place that took out what was Sodom and the people of the plain, the Kikar, the area around and east of Jordan, north and east of the Dead Sea. And we're going to see that during our tour of Israel and Jordan in May. You can join us for that, because I am told by Dr. Sylvia that when we climb Mount Nebo, we won't climb, the bus will take us up there. I mean, we're not like Ty and Aaron, where, Ali is going to, take us the Indiana Jones route. We'll take a bus up there, and there will be bathrooms before you ask. But you can see the dig site, Tal El Hammam, very plainly from the summit of Mount Nebo. So while we're up there, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Dead Sea. We'll talk about the Valley of the Travelers prophesied by Ezekiel, which lies at the foot of Mount Nebo. Mount Nebo was called a mountain of the Avarim, Abarim, mountain of the travelers. Travelers in the context of Ezekiel 39 means spirits that travel or cross over from one plane of existence to another. This is where knowing a little bit about what the pagans around ancient Israel believed is really helpful, because the Canaanites called the spirits of the Rephaim travelers. And Ezekiel saw fit to mention them in his prophecy of the war of Gog and Magog, which is Armageddon. That's the kind of stuff we'll be talking about on our tour. We will also be going to Qumran. We'll be going to Qumran on the tour, and we've confirmed, in fact, we met with him here in our home yesterday. Jim Barfield, founder of the Copper Scroll Project, will be conducting a personal tour of Qumran, showing us some of his research. Can't show us all of it, but some of his research and some of the sites where he believes are things that were buried to hide them from the Babylonians in the 6th century BC by Jeremiah, Haggai, the prophet. Things that are extremely... frankly, this would make Indiana Jones look like an amateur. If what is there is what he thinks is there, this could be the greatest archaeological find in all of history. I mean, even greater than the scrolls themselves. And those are critical, there's no question about that, because it's confirmed what we know about the Bible. It's confirmed that the texts of the Bible, the Old Testament, have been accurately preserved down the millennia. But the Copper Scroll points to a treasure trove that may be the materials that were hidden from the Babylonians before they could take Jerusalem and sack the temple. So Jim Barfield will be there. He will take us on a tour, and you can join us. There's still some room on the second bus. If you're interested, lipkintours.com. There's a link at the website, vftb.net. lipkintours.com is the website. Look for the SkyWatchTV Wars of the Gods Tour of Israel. And we hope you can join us. It's May 12th through the 23rd for the Israel portion. If you want to stay a few extra days, that's when we'll go over to Jordan. We will go to Mount Nebo. We will go to Petra. And we got some things to talk to you about concerning Petra that you probably have not heard before. Concerning, well, I won't go into that now because we've got a limited amount of time. And I do want to cover a couple of other stories before we close out for tonight. But again, if you're interested, check the website, vftb.net. Follow the link to lipkintours.com. Artificial intelligence is something that we've been watching at SkyWatch TV. Sharon and I have been watching for a while because it is, on the one hand, has the potential to really be a benefit to humanity. I mean, having machines that can process data and run different simulations and things could lead to new scientific discoveries that are absolutely could be life-changing. On the other hand, if the AIs become autonomous and are actually able to think for themselves, things could get really dangerous. And apparently we're just about at that stage because the creators of a new AI system that can write news stories and works of fiction similar to these new deep fakes that they're talking about, images that can be created by artificial intelligence that are totally made up, but they look absolutely real. They don't look like computer-generated images. It's not CGI. These deep fake images look absolutely real. And it's frightening because they can merge actual images. In other words, take a real person's face and put him on a made-up body, doing something that that person would not have done. We're on the verge of an era in which video and still images will not be admissible in court anymore because the fakes can't be told from the real anymore. And now we're seeing this with a new text generator that can write news stories and works of fiction that are so good you can't tell that a computer is generating them. But the creators who are behind this, a nonprofit research company called OpenAI, which is backed by Elon Musk and other wealthy tech experts, say this new AI model is so good. It's called GPT-2. It's so good, and the risk of it being used for evil is so high that they are not going to release it. They are not releasing the full research because they want more time to discuss the potential ramifications. So we're already seeing algorithms that are creating stories, especially for sports events where the teams involved are maybe Division II colleges, Division III colleges. Okay, who's the high scorer? What was the final score? What's the team's record? How many in a row have they won or lost? Just input the data, and the algorithm will crank out a story. Saves time, saves writers, and saves the company money. the news organization money. But if you can actually create stuff whole cloth with an AI and then put it to evil use, I'm sure there are ways of creating this, putting this thing to use that I haven't thought of, just because, I'm not evil. But apparently the guys at OpenAI are concerned about that. And when you couple that with news from another research group at Columbia University, that they've created a self-aware robot that actually repaired itself. Things are beginning, we're on the verge of being able to put these pieces together and create a self-aware, autonomous, artificially intelligent cyborg robot. I mean, do we really want self-aware, autonomous machines? I think there's a real danger there. And yet, the military is going to continue pushing for developing these because, well, we have to get them before the Russians and the Chinese. Even though they might turn on us and kill us, this might be an existential threat to all of human life. But if we don't do it, the Chinese and the Russians will get there first. Well, at the same time this is going on, a couple of researchers have published a new book called At Our Wits' End, Why We're Becoming Less Intelligent and What It Means for Our Future. That's the title of the book. And just in a nutshell, I've not read the book. I'm just basically looking at reviews of the book that have come out. But the key takeaway, according to those who have read the book and reviewed it, is that they are, by looking at studies of intelligence conducted around the world over the last decades, going back, to the 1400s? Now, going back to the 19th century. Anyway, the bottom line is that as a population, we are getting less intelligent. Intelligence quotients are dropping year by year. Small percentage of a point, not like multiples of standard deviation or anything like that, but the authors of the piece point out a few things that some of us have probably noticed and just kind of ignored because thinking about the implications are uncomfortable. Like, for example, in 1969, the Concorde, the supersonic passenger jet, flew for the first time, and it cut the time of a transatlantic flight from 8 hours down to 3.5. But a Concorde crashed in the year 2000 due to human error. All of those flights have been discontinued. And we no longer fly a supersonic jet like the Concorde. The last time we went to the moon, assuming we actually went to the moon, but the last time we went to the moon, ostensibly, 1972. Why haven't we been back to the moon since 1972? Computer processing power is a lot better now than it was then. We're supposed to believe that somehow we navigated to the moon with computers that are less powerful than the processors we have inside our smartphones. And yet, for some reason, we can't get back there now? What is the cause of this regression? Well, the authors of this book, At Our Wits' End, is that we as a population are just getting less intelligent. There was a movie out a few years ago, a comedy called The Idiocracy. But sadly, it appears that this may not be as much a parody as we would like to think. It makes us wonder, is our increasing dependence on technology contributing to this disease? Not disease, but this trend. We think we're smarter, but are we really? Do we just know how to look it up in a hurry? Having access to Wikipedia does not substitute for actual knowledge. Well, what else do we want to touch on here before we get out of here this evening? I noticed that there's been a Ruth Bader Ginsburg sighting. She I say that tongue-in-cheek. She did return to the Supreme Court, and we are glad to see that she is recovering from her most recent surgery, dealing with lung cancer, so she is back in the Supreme Court. The collusion case against President Trump, the idea that the Trump campaign was somehow colluding with Russia, falling apart. The Senate Intelligence Committee last week announced that they had found no direct evidence of conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia. And this is according to both Democrats and Republicans on the committee. Now, anyone who's been paying attention to deep and unbiased analysis of the evidence that was being put forward and how that case was assembled in the first place, how the FBI got approval to begin investigating members of the Trump campaign, it was pretty clear early on that if there was any collusion at all between a foreign power, or at least agents of a foreign government, and American politicians, it was the Clinton for President campaign that was colluding with the British agent, the former MI6 operative Christopher Steele, who was using information from Russia to try to build a case against President Trump. So if there was any collusion, it was not the Trump campaign. It was not the Republicans. It was the DNC and especially the Hillary Clinton campaign. But anyway, Senate Intelligence Committee said, well, there's nothing here. There is no there. So as that hoax begins to unwind, the media is now beginning to pretend that they knew it was nothing all along, and the attention has been shifted to other things. The fight over the border, the issue with Virginia's Governor Northam and, Blackface Gate, which now seems to have faded from view. But while the Senate has said there's nothing here, the Democrats in the House are getting ready to start launching its full investigative powers. And they're just going to drag this out for another couple of years. The idea is not to really come up with anything. It's just to make the president look bad, to keep him back on his heels, playing defense. Politics at the national level especially is a blood sport. Pray for President Trump, because I just don't know how anybody in their right mind willingly walks into that buzzsaw that is politics. And President Trump is catching it from both sides. There is a deep state. It doesn't belong to one specific political party or the other. The political class behind the scenes wants him out of there. And there are quite a few of them that are working inside the White House. One final note, you may have heard that DC Comics has canceled The Second Coming. Not the actual Second Coming. I mean, that's going to happen when it happens. They had a new comic title that was going to come out on one of their imprints. DC Comics has an imprint called Vertigo, which is publishing adult comics, or so-called adult comics. Last fall, they announced a new comic series called Second Coming, which they described as sort of a lighthearted, satirical look at Jesus Christ, in which he was depicted as a bumbling idiot, really, who messed up his mission on Earth so badly, got himself arrested and then killed so quickly into his mission, only 3 years into his mission, that he'd basically been locked up by God the Father for a couple thousand years until an actual superhero, Sunman, shows up on the scene. And so God decides to send Jesus back to Earth so that he can intern, more or less, with an actual superhero to see how the job is supposed to be done. Well, the story made it to Fox News. Somebody at Fox picked up on it and put the story out in January, even though this kind of had been floating around there since last October. And once that happened, then a number of conservative and Christian media outlets got a hold of it, and the backlash began against DC Comics. Say, hey, look, this really is blasphemy. I mean, you might think it's funny, but it's only because you don't really understand the stakes involved here. Stuff like this, joking about Jesus Christ messing up his mission, is really only funny if you don't understand that the stakes are your eternal soul and the souls of everyone that you love and care about. Now, if you can laugh at that, well, then there's something wrong with you. Got no problem laughing at jokes, sometimes jokes that are even a bit tasteless. Even dark humor. Some of the programs we watch on television or off Netflix or whatever. Not blasphemous, but sometimes tasteless by some standards. So, I've got a sense of humor, but once you're convicted that the history of the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ is a real thing, and the historical evidence for those events, just about the best attested event of the classical period of history ever, the death and resurrection of Jesus. I mean, we get eyewitness testimony. You may not accept that eyewitness testimony. Okay, that's up to you. God created all of us with free will, which includes the free will to ignore evidence or make bad decisions. It is not incumbent on you and I as Christians to bash anyone over the head, try to convert them at the point of a sword or anything like that. Happy to give the hope that I have in Christ Jesus. I hope with gentleness and respect. Sometimes I get carried away. The old debate team captain in me, rears his head, and I feel like I've got to win the argument, which is not always the way to convey that kind of information. But once you understand that that was a real historical event and that Jesus really did rise from the dead, prophesied his own resurrection, and rose again from the dead, and because he then validated all of the law and the prophets, validated the life of Abraham and Moses and the prophets, then all of that stuff is real too. And since you're playing for eternal stakes, joking about it, making it fodder for a comic that insults the faith of 1.6 billion Christians on the planet, it really isn't that funny. Now, again, I can see there are ways to do humor about Christianity. Babylon Bee is funnier than The Onion. And a lot of the stuff a lot of the targets of its parody, of its satire, are Christians and some of the silly things that we do. That's fine. Let's laugh about that. But at the end of the day, we have to agree on a couple of non-negotiables, which is that Jesus Christ died for my sins and rose again from the dead on the third day. He did not mess up his mission. He was not a failure. His death was not a tragedy. It was a necessity. Tragic in that it was necessary, but necessary nonetheless. So anyway, DC Comics has pulled The Second Coming. It will not be published. And it will not be missed. Got a busy year lined up ahead. We're getting close. We're only 3 months out from that Israel tour. Again, lipkintours.com if you're interested there. At the end of March, we're only 6 weeks out from the Hear the Watchman Conference coming to Dallas, March 29th through 31st. L.A. Marzulli, Russ Dizdar, Pastor Carl Gallups, Rabbi Zev Porat, our colleagues there, Carl and Zev, will be touring with us around Israel when we go to Israel in May. Pastor Paul Begley, Dr. Michael Lake, Coach Dave, Michael Boldea, Gary Wayne, and Irvin Baxter. Some new speakers at Hear the Watchman. We can save you money. If you're going to go to the conference, we can save you $20 off the tickets. If you can't make it there, but you want to watch the video, HD video of the presentations from the Hear the Watchman conference, we can save you 20% on that. And they still have an early bird discount on the video streaming, just $49. But if you use the promo code Gilbert20, that's Gilbert20, we can save you 20% on the video, $20 on the tickets. Again, Gilbert20 at hearthewatchmen.com. The Skywatch TV Defender Conference in August, that is sold out, but we've got video streaming information on the way. Got a couple of technical things to take care of, logistical things, and then we will roll out the video feed, and the information will be posted at defenderconference.com. Defenderconference.com for information there. In September, the True Legends Conference, September 13th through 15th, they'll be talking about the alien question. L.A. Marzulli, Steve Quayle, Timothy Alberino, and more. Richard Dolan will be back along with Dr. Hugo DeGaris for information. Gen6.com, GENSIX.com. And again, Hope you can join us in May for a special tour of Qumran with Jim Barfield of the Copper Scroll Project. For information, lipkintours.com. And we thank you for listening, whether live or in the archive. Leave a review, if you please. Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever else fine podcasts are sold. And give us a like at Facebook, facebook.com/viewfromthebunker. It's a production of Gilbert House, released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. The opening theme, Iron Bacon, by Kevin MacLeod. His website, www.incompetech.com. Our announcer is D.C. Good. Next week, Sean and Brian, the Chrysagas brothers, join us here. That's February 24th, VFTB.net, where we wrestle not against flesh and blood. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is A View from the Bunker.